Picture a chill autumn night in 1347. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke seeping through the thin stone walls of a small cottage. Inside, a girl named Margot stands barefoot on rushes that crunch faintly beneath her toes. She is no more than 15, a child in years, but tonight declared a woman by the will of others. Her new husband, Henrik, steps closer, his face lined and weathered, his shoulders hunched from years of field work. Nearly twice her age, he has been chosen not by her heart, but by her father, a trade seal for 3 pigs, half an acre of barley, and the promise that their 2 families will be bound in mutual survival. The flicker of candlelight catches on the coarse fibers of the wool shift her mother stitched by hand, the same garment her mother wore on her own wedding night, and her grandmother before her. Its weight on Margot's thin shoulders feels less like clothing and more like a chain, heavy with generations of unspoken duty. Outside, voices ring out in drunken cheer. The wedding guests, neighbors, kin, and curious villagers have no intention of leaving until the union is confirmed in the way tradition demands. They shout crude encouragements and bang pots with wooden spoons, laughing raucously. It is a celebration, but not for her. She knows what comes next. The bedding ceremony is less a private moment than a public ritual. Moments ago, those same guests half-dragged her and Henrik from the feast to this chamber. Some helped strip them of their outer garments while singing bawdy songs, their breath thick with ale. They left them here, not to bless their first night in tender privacy, but to listen at the door, to wait for sounds that would prove consummation beyond doubt. This is not intimacy. It is evidence gathering, sanctioned by custom, demanded by the community. Margot's hands tremble as she clutches at the neckline of her shift. She remembers her mother's whispered warnings about wifely duties, spoken without emotion, as if passing down a recipe. No mention of love, no room for choice. Through the thin walls, the muffled laughter seems louder than her own breathing. She feels the heat of Henrik's presence behind her, his shadow stretching long in the candlelight. For the villagers, what will happen in this smoky, cramped room is more than personal. It is a public transaction. In their eyes, Margot's body is a seal on a contract, her virginity a currency exchanged between families. If the proof comes in the form of blood on the linen, it will mean her family's honor is intact, her father's bargain fulfilled, Henrik's claim legitimized. If not, shame will ripple outward, not just for her, but for everyone tied to her name. Henrik steps forward, his boots scuffing against the rushes. His hands are rough and calloused, the hands of a man who has turned soil and slaughtered livestock, now reaching for the core around her throat. The weight of expectation presses on her from all sides. From the men outside waiting for proof, from the church that blesses this act as holy duty, from the unyielding customs that have governed every marriage she has ever seen. This is the world Margot was born into. One where the marriage bed is not a sanctuary, but a stage, where a bride's first night is not hers to give freely, but hers to endure for the sake of survival. The medieval bedroom was as much a political arena as any court, the site where alliances were sealed, wealth exchanged, and honor defended. Every sigh, every cry, every silence could ripple through the village as gossip or proof. Margot closes her eyes. Somewhere beyond these walls, the Black Death has begun its slow crawl across Europe, changing the fates of entire kingdoms. But here, in this flickering half-light, the only plague she knows is the one born of fear, silence, and the unrelenting grip of tradition. Tonight, she is not a girl. She is a transaction completed, a promise kept, a pawn moved across a board she cannot even see. And as Henrik's shadow falls fully across her, Margot learns what every bride of her time already knows. In the medieval world, there is no such thing as a truly private moment between husband and wife. The eyes of the village, the hand of the church, and the weight of family honor are always in the room. For Margot, there is no roadmap for what follows. Her mother's warnings have been vague, and what little she knows of the act itself comes not from women's confidences, but from the pulpit. From the moment she could sit still through Mass, the voice of the village priest has filled her ears with the church's decrees on the flesh, a recitation of rules, so exacting they could strip the warm from even the most willing embrace. The words of St. Jerome, often quoted in those sermons, still echo in her mind. A man who loves his wife too ardently is an adulterer. To the church father's excessive pleasure, even between married couples, was not just indulgence, but a corruption of the soul. The medieval world took this to heart, folding it into a system where desire was always suspect, and restraint was the highest virtue. By Margot's time, the great theologian Thomas Aquinas had already set the boundaries in his Summa Theologica. It was a map of permissible intimacy that felt less like guidance and more like a gauntlet of prohibitions. Only one position was sanctioned: man above, woman beneath, face to face, not for comfort, not for preference, but because anything else was considered against nature. To reverse the roles, to approach from behind, to do anything that deviated from the prescribed order, all were sins capable of endangering the eternal soul. The rules went beyond form. Certain days of the week were forbidden. Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays were set aside for fasting and prayer. Entire seasons, Lent, Advent, and other holy periods, were off limits, no matter the couple's circumstances. Sex during menstruation was unthinkable, and during pregnancy or breastfeeding it was condemned as risking the health of both mother and child. The Church's calculations meant that, if followed faithfully, a married couple might have been permitted to lie together only 50 nights in a year. Margot, still new to these obligations, already understands the impossible bind they create. If Henrik should reach for her on a forbidden night, say, a Wednesday during Lent, she has two choices: to refuse him and risk angering the man who now holds legal power over her life, or to submit and risk her soul's salvation. In her world, neither law nor custom would come to her defense if she refused him. A wife's obedience was assumed, her body part her husband's property. The Church's grip extended beyond these visible rules, shaping how people thought about the body itself. Priests warned that lust, even in marriage, opened the door to the devil. Parishioners were told to confess the sin of enjoying the act, as if pleasure itself were evidence of moral decay. It was said that too much affection between husband and wife could turn love into idolatry, placing one's partner before God. To enforce these doctrines, confession became a tool of surveillance. Margot has heard of priests questioning women about the position they used, the timing of their relations, even their thoughts during the act. Parishioners answered in whispers, cheeks burning, but they answered all the same. Refusal could mean suspicion. Suspicion could mean ruin. For the Church, the marital bed was not a sanctuary, but a testing ground, a place where obedience to God's law was measured moment by moment. For Margot, it meant living in a state of constant uncertainty. Was tonight allowed? Would her soul be clean in the morning? And perhaps most haunting of all, if the Church deemed so much as astray, thought sinful, could she ever be truly pure? Henrik, for his part, knows the rules in the way most men of his station do. Vaguely, filtered through habit and hearsay. He may not remember which days are forbidden, or perhaps he simply chooses not to care. In a world where domestic authority is by divine right, the weight of obedience falls squarely on her shoulders. He is free to act. She is bound to answer for it. Before God, before her neighbors, before the priest who watches their lives from the pulpit. And so, the flickering candlelight in their cottage is not just a glow against the night. It is a reminder that the Church's gaze, though invisible, follows him here too, shadowing every touch. The bed may be theirs, but the rules belong to someone else. If Margot had hoped that the realm of medicine might offer clearer truths than the Church, she would be sorely disappointed. In her time, the science of the female body was a patchwork of ancient Greek philosophy, Roman superstition, and medieval guesswork, often more dangerous than ignorance itself. Learned men in distant universities wrote in Latin about women, as if they were distorted reflections of men, incomplete copies whose anatomy was merely a male body turned inside out. Margot has never seen these manuscripts, but their teachings trickle down into the midwife's cautions and the village gossip. The common wisdom says a woman's organs are inverted versions of a man's, the vagina an inside-out penis, the ovaries hidden testicles. It is more than a misunderstanding. It is the medical consensus of her age, and it carries consequences. If the female body is but a flawed mirror of the male, then its desires, pains, and ailment are also seen as lesser or suspect. Among the more unsettling beliefs is the idea of the wandering womb. Medieval physicians insist that a woman's uterus can slip free of its proper place, drifting inside the body like an untethered creature. Should it rise too far, they say, It could crush the heart. Should it sink too low, it might escape entirely. The remedies are as strange as the ailment. To lure the womb back to its rightful place, fumigate the vagina with sweet herbs and flowers. To drive it downward, hold foul-smelling substances under the woman's nose. The medical texts are equally misguided when it comes to conception. Constantine the African, a famed physician of the 11th century, claimed that women needed prolonged stimulation and multiple climaxes to conceive, a notion that might sound almost enlightened until it's twisted into cruelty. From this belief comes a dark logic that rape cannot cause pregnancy. If a woman carries a child after assault, it is seen as proof she must have enjoyed it. This, in turn, feeds into the legal systems that judge her complicit in her own violation. Yet beyond the church's walls and the physician's lecture halls, another layer of knowledge persists, one passed in whispers among women, away from prying ears. Margot has heard it from her mother, who heard it from hers. The secret lore of herbs, moon phases, and ritual gestures that can coax or prevent pregnancy. In the forest, women gather under the full moon to harvest pennyroyal and tansy, plants known to prevent conception. The line between dose and poison is thin. The same brew that might avert a child could also stop a woman's heart. They speak of the mandrake root, shaped uncannily like a human figure. Worn against the skin, it is said to draw fertility. Buried beneath the marriage bed, it blesses a union. So prized is the mandrake that fakes, carved from other roots, are sold in markets for a fraction of the cost. The church condemns such things as witchcraft, but in practice, even the most devout women may wear a saint's relic by day and sip a secret infusion by night. This hidden world is not born of rebellion, but of necessity. For women like Margot, pregnancy is both duty and mortal risk. 1 in 3 mothers will not survive childbirth. The graveyards bear silent testimony to their passing. The choice to delay or avoid pregnancy is rarely spoken aloud, but the fear of dying in childbed is ever present. Contraceptive charms, a pebble tied in a linen cloth, a whispered prayer to St. Margaret, are small acts of self-preservation in a life where control over one's body is all but impossible. To the men of the parish, these rituals are curiosities or crimes. To the women who keep them alive, they are lifelines. They carry forward knowledge the physicians ignore, blending fragment of ancient pagan rites with Christian prayer, binding the threads of superstition and survival into a fragile shield against a world that demands their bodies but offers them no safety in return. Margot, still untested by childbirth, feels the weight of that knowledge pressing in. Tonight she lies under Henrik's gaze. Tomorrow she may lie under the midwife's hands. And in both places, her fate will be shaped as much by myths and mistakes as by anything resembling truth. In Margot's world, a young woman's worth can be measured in a single brutal moment, and in a single stain on linen. Her virginity is not a private matter, but an asset in negotiation, as tangible as the pigs and grain her father received for arranging this marriage. To fail in providing proof of it is not merely a personal humiliation. It is an economic betrayal and a public scandal. The bedding ceremony has already stripped Margot of dignity. What follows strips her of privacy. At dawn, if all goes according to expectation, the bedclothes will be carried from the chamber to the feasting table. The women of both families will gather to inspect the spots of blood upon the sheet, their faces serious, their verdicts binding. It will be paraded as evidence before neighbors and guests, a final seal on the transaction. If there is no blood, through natural anatomy, a gentle husband, or an already torn hymen from riding or work, the consequences can be catastrophic. A bride might be sent back to her family in disgrace, her dowry refused. In some places, she might be beaten or killed for a fraud. Even suspicion alone can ruin her, for gossip travels faster than any messenger and wounds more deeply than any blade. Margot has heard of girls who prick their fingers in the dark, smearing their blood onto the sheets to safeguard themselves. Others smuggled vials of chicken blood beneath their pillows. These small acts of deception are survival strategies in a culture where the body is subject to inspection and where anatomy is misread as moral evidence. The medical understanding of virginity in the 14th century is woefully inaccurate. Learned men write that the hymen is a solid membrane, sealed like a parchment over the opening, that must be broken in a single bloody act. They do not understand that it can stretch, tear without blood, or be absent altogether. The Church's fixation on consummation turns this private moment into a legal matter. Without intercourse, a marriage is not valid, and so, if there is a dispute, ecclesiastical courts can intervene. Margot has heard whispers of these trials. The couple examined separately, the woman's body inspected for signs of penetration. The neighbors questioned about what they heard through the walls on the wedding night. There is no dignity in the process, no shield from humiliation. Yet while official doctrine frames sex as a regulated duty, the undercurrent of medieval life tells another story. Beyond the reach of priests and court officials lies a shadow literature, the bawdy French fabliaux, whisper verses, and wandering minstrel songs that revel in the pleasures the Church condemns. In these tales, wives seduce their husbands, lovers meet in secret, and desire is celebrated, if only in fiction. They are dangerous stories, subversive in their humor, dangerous because they hint at a truth the authorities would rather erase, that women might claim pleasure for themselves. Margot will never see these verses. They are passed among the literate elite or recited in taverns where no decent woman dares linger. Still, their existence seeps in the air of her world. Proof that even under the weight of law, shame, and religious scrutiny, human desire persists. And though her wedding night is more about survival than romance, there is a quiet defiance in knowing that somewhere, others refuse to let the act be reduced to mere proof and property. But in this moment, as the candle sputters low, defiance is a dangerous luxury. The sheet beneath Margot is not just linen. It is a ledger, a contract, and a verdict waiting to be written in blood. In the dim, uneven glow of the candle, Margot senses more than Henrik's presence in the room. It is not unusual for a medieval bride to feel watched on her wedding night, not only by the villagers pressing their ears to the door, but by forces far more sinister, as the Church has long warned. For in this world, lust is never purely human. The devil has his agents, and they are said come in the night. The priest has preached of them often. The succubus, the demon in the shape of a woman, who tempts men in their sleep, and the incubus, the male counterpart who violates women without warning. These creatures are not folklore to Margot's neighbors. They are accepted as medical and theological fact. Learned men write elaborate theories explaining how demons steal a man's seed, take human form, and use it to impregnate unsuspecting women. A child born of such a union is believed to carry a curse, marked from birth by the devil's claim. For women, the incubus is a particular terror. Stronger than any mortal man, he is said to pin his victims down, robbing them of breath and will. The sensation we now understand as sleep paralysis, waking to find one's body frozen, a crushing weight on the chest, was then read as a literal assault. Margot knows the warnings, a sudden inability to speak upon waking, a shadow in the corner of the room, a lingering ache, all signs that a demon has come. And in a cruel twist, those who claim to be victims are often accused of having invited the demon willingly. Exorcisms are the Church's remedy, but they offer no guarantee of safety. Margot has heard of women who, after reporting such attacks, were burned as witches rather than freed. In a world where the line between victim and heretic is razor thin, fear often forces silence. The supernatural is not confined to the bedroom. Margot grew up hearing that a woman's menstrual blood is poison, so dangerous it can kill crops, sour wine, or make men sterile. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder claimed it could drive dogs mad and dull the edge of steel knives. These words, preserved and taught for centuries, shaped the rules of her community. Menstruating women are barred from preparing food, entering churches, or touching sacred objects. In some villages, they are sent to small huts on the outskirts until the bleeding stops, as if their very presence could corrupt the community's health and soul. The Church reinforces these taboos, teaching that menstruation is God's punishment for Eve's original sin. Each month is a reminder of inherited shame, a visible marker of woman's moral fragility. Physicians warn of blocked menstrual flow poisoning the body from within, prescribing bloodletting, purges, or, in an irony the priests ignore, sexual intercourse as a cure. They argue that a man's seed can neutralize the toxicity of menstrual blood, turning an ailment into yet another justification for male entitlement. And yet, in the privacy of their own company, women share remedies that physicians will never hear of. They use moss, wool, or softened sheepskin as makeshift protection. They track their cycles by the phases of the moon, brewing teas of chamomile or yarrow to ease cramps, drying sprigs of sage to regulate the flow. This knowledge is guarded fiercely, passed from mother to daughter, kept from men who might brand it as witchcraft. Margot has learned some of it in whispers, the way her mother pressed a sprig of rosemary into her palm once, saying only for when the pain is too much. It is a hidden language of survival, one that exists alongside and in defiance of the official teachings of the church. Tonight, as the wind sighs through cracks in the cottage walls and the revelers outside grow quieter, Margot feels the weight of both worlds pressing in, the visible demand of honor and proof, and the invisible terrors of sin's spirits and cycles. Somewhere between Henrik's heavy breathing and the flickering shadows, she cannot shake the feeling that she is not alone, and that in the medieval night, a closed door is no true barrier at all. If the wedding night is about sealing a contract, the days and years before it are about securing the deal, and in Margot's world, romance rarely has anything to do with it. Courtship is as much a calculation as a harvest, timing alliances and the promise of heirs outweighing any stirrings of the heart. For the wealthy, this calculation is often accompanied by a physician's inspection of prospective bride's hips, hair, and complexion. Wide hips mean fertility. A narrow frame suggests barrenness. Even the shape of a man's genitals might be discreetly discussed to determine compatibility. Astrology, too, plays a role. Learned men claim that the stars and planets can decide whether a couple will be blessed with sons, live in harmony, or fall into ruin. A hot-tempered, fiery husband might clash with a cool-natured, watery wife. The balance of bodily humors, hot, cold, wet, dry, is said to govern not only health, but the satisfaction of the marriage bed. Among nobles, courtly love has flourished in poetry and song. Troubadours spin tales of knights devoted to unattainable ladies, their love a spiritual quest that remains eternally unconsummated. This ideal, intoxicating to the literate elite, draws a sharp line between marital duty and romantic longing. In the poetry, love belongs to the realm of yearning. In reality, marriage belongs to the realm of property. For peasants like Margot, these songs are distant fantasies, though their themes trickle down through traveling minstrels, altering the way people think about desire. Still, in rural villages, there are customs meant to test the waters between betrothed couples. The bundling practice in some regions allows them to lie in bed together, fully clothed, separated by a heavy wooden board or a sewn sack, to talk through the night without breaking church rules. Parents listen for signs of comfort or discord. Sometimes, the experiment is less chaste than intended, but it serves its purpose in assessing compatibility before vows are spoken. Other traditions carry more blatant fertility magic. The festival of May Day, officially a celebration of spring, is notorious for its unspoken invitation to sexual freedom. Young men and women slip into the forest under the pretense of gathering flowers and branches, returning at dawn with flushed cheeks and tangled hair. The church rails against it, but in practice, the night often ends with new courtships, and sometimes new pregnancies, calculated to bring forth a child in the following February. Weddings themselves are laced with gestures meant to ensure fertility. Grain or nuts are showered upon the bride. The marriage bed may be blessed with holy water while, beneath the mattress, hidden herbs and charms promise strong sons. No single tradition is trusted on its own. Christian blessings mingle with pagan rites, each tolerated as long as it does not too openly defy the priest's authority. When it comes to conception, the medieval understanding is as tangled as the mix of beliefs that shape it. Physicians teach that both man and woman produce seed that must meet in the womb to create life, and that a woman's orgasm is necessary for conception to occur. From this emerges a cruel logic used in courts. If a woman becomes pregnant after a forced encounter, it is taken as evidence she consented. Others believe that the moon's phase or the star's positions can determine the child's sex, while certain diets, more red meat for sons, more dairy for daughters, are recommended to influence fate. In this swirl of superstition, poetry, and law, Margot's path to marriage has been anything but her own. The idea of choosing a husband for love is a luxury beyond her imagining. Yet she has absorbed, almost without knowing it, the mixed messages of her age. That desire is dangerous, but also a gift. That love is a noble torment, but marriage a practical bargain. And now, on the far side of her vows, she stands at the point where those contradictions meet, in a bed that must serve both as a symbol of union and a crucible of survival. In Margot's time, the church's rules are not simply whispered from pulpits. They are enforced through an intricate web of surveillance and punishment. Confession is one such net, a sacred duty that doubles as a source of intelligence. Parishioners kneel before their priests and in hushed tones recount intimate details, how often they lie with their spouse, on which days, and in what manner. The wrong answer, even in private, can bring penance or public shame, and if the sin is deemed grave enough, it may become the business of the bishop's court. The Inquisition, though concerned mainly with heresy, is not above interrogating the bedroom. Manuals used by inquisitors list dozens of unnatural acts, complete with pointed questions to extract confessions. What position? How long? Was pleasure sought? The language is clinical, but its effect is prurient and terrifying. Civil law is no less harsh, and far more uneven. Rape is not seen as a crime against the woman herself, but against a man who owns her father, husband, or lord. The punishment depends entirely on the victim's rank. A noble woman's assault might lead to execution, while a peasant attacker could escape with a fine. Adultery, too, is a one-sided peril. A wife caught with another man could be killed on the spot by her husband with no legal consequence, while husbands face little for straying, so long as their partner is unmarried or of lower station. Control over women's sexuality is sometimes made literal. The chastity belt, whether rare or symbolic, embodies the same fear, that a woman's autonomy over her own body must be locked away, physically restrained. And yet, in the same towns where priests thunder against lust, brothels operate under official license. Prostitutes wear distinct clothing and are confined to certain districts, their work tacitly tolerated so long as it serves the needs of men without disrupting respectable households. Then there's the shadowed legend of the Droit du Seigneur, the so-called rite of first night, in which a feudal lord claims a right to sleep with a bride before her new husband. Historians debate whether it was ever widely practiced, but the fact that the rumor persists tells its own truth. In this hierarchy, a woman's body is never fully hers. And yet, even in such a tightly controlled world, there are cracks in the walls. Couples find ways to evade the watchful eyes of priests and neighbors. Secret meetings in barns, coded love letters, trysts during festivals, each small act of quiet rebellion. The bawdy songs of the marketplace, the scandalous verses of hidden manuscripts, the whispered advice passed between midwives. All of these carry a subversive current, a reminder that desire does not die just because it is forbidden. For Margot, these acts of defiance are distant rumors, perhaps glimpsed in the sly smile of an older woman at the well, or in the muffled laughter of girls at the edge of the feast. She may never taste such freedom herself, but knowing it exists somewhere makes her world feel less absolute, less sealed shut. Still, the reality remains. The bed she lies in tonight is as much a courtroom as it is a chamber, its verdicts unspoken but binding. Her trembling hands, Henrik's callous grip, the silence between them, all are weighed against laws she did not write and punishment she cannot escape. The flicker of the candle catches the unease in her eyes, and in that light, we see the entire machinery of medieval sexual culture pressing down upon her. Intimacy here is never private. It is political, policed, and perilous. And yet, even under the weight of law and superstition, there is an ember that survives. The human desire to connect, to choose, to love, despite the risk, despite the rules. That ember will smolder through centuries of repression, until the day it can burn openly,